We have a big show tonight. We begin with the storm of problems raining on Donald Trump and the GOP with less than 3 months before the midterms. Tonight, Trump facing a massive polling crash, rising gas prices, an unpopular war of choice, and a MAGA revolt by some of his closest MAGA allies and voters. Look at this. Trump's approval rating is now at the lowest point of his second term, according to newly released average from prominent pollster Nate Silver. His average approval has sunk to 38%, the lowest number any president has faced at this point in his second term since Harry Truman. Some polls have him as low as 32%. His average disapproval sits at 58%, also the worst of his second term. And this probably won't help at all. Trump telling supporters at a rally last night, quote, "We may have to send oil prices higher amid the Iran war," implicitly taking ownership of high gas prices. And it's not just Trump, though. His own Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, making headlines by downplaying income inequality. Bessent rejecting the term K-shaped economy, shorthand for the income gap. Watch what he said compared to what multiple Trump voters told MS Now's Alex Tabbitt.
I got sick of hearing about this K-shaped economy.
You can't save now. Every dollar you have has to go to gas, groceries, bills, rent.
I can say here definitively the K-shaped economy is over.
You know, you can't do anything with gas prices, and you just can't afford to breathe at this point.
And we're seeing more of a C economy where the lower end of wage earners are finally calling it back, just like they did in President Trump's first term.
Low class might as well, crawl in a hole because they can't afford anything.
It's not just a few Trump voters, though. Trump is also dealing with a new revolt from exiled MAGA members, led by Tucker Carlson, Marjorie Taylor Greene, and others. They seem to be considering the launch of a MAGA alternative, arguing Trump has, quote, betrayed America. Carlson also releasing a 10-point manifesto for how to rebuild the country after the president is done wrecking it, as the Daily Beast puts it. Carlson then blasting Trump on camera.
So you have the president of the United States, whatever they tell you, openly threatening the use of nuclear weapons in a conflict that has no immediate or obvious resolutions. You've already proven yourself incapable of leadership because that's crazy. That's beyond reckless. It's literally suicidal and homicidal.
Now, Trump is also reportedly taking his anger directly to members of his own cabinet. The Washington Post reporting on a clash in which Trump pressed his Pentagon chief Pete Hegseth over America's dwindling munitions. Trump reportedly demanding answers on the, quote, extreme munition shortages that now threaten to limit military options with Iran. The White House denies the exchange occurred, but it's all context for the GOP's growing midterm fears. Political reporting on a closed-door Senate GOP meeting where the big question was, when is Trump going to focus on the midterms and take the advice of his own team? One Republican senator asking, quote, when Trump would start attacking Democrats instead of attacking Republicans. Things are not much better over in the House. Axios reporting on Democrats' improving map. Quote, 4 scandal-plagued House Republicans whose seats should be gimmies for the GOP have instead turned their races into unexpected battlegrounds. And that's where we start tonight. Trouble surrounding Trump and the GOP just 3 months from the midterms. Joining me now is Molly Jong-Fast, contributor writer for the New York Times, host of Fast Politics podcast, and MS Now political analyst Rick Wilson, co-founder of the Lincoln Project and political strategist who has worked on multiple Republican presidential campaigns. Molly, Rick, thank you both for joining here this evening. Molly, thanks, let's start with you here. Taking all of this together, the numbers don't look good for Republicans. Donald Trump, the head of their party, is in denial over his polling. What would you tell Democrats, though, who may be getting ahead of themselves about what they should be cautious for at this point?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think right now what Democrats need to focus on is getting sort of solidarity after some bruising primaries. What needs to happen now is that the loser in the primary needs to endorse the winner. That needs to happen in Michigan. That happened in Texas. Those kind of things. The Democrats need to get together and sort of, even though there's a lot happening in the Democratic Party right now, but but right before the midterms, and we're like a little bit less than 90 days from the midterms, Democrats really need to be focused on unity, on turning out their voters, on exciting their base, which is excited, and about, getting voter turnout and making sure that the midterms are safe. Because remember, there's a lot of voter intimidation coming from the Republican side and a lot of, sort of stuff coming from Trump world that, is problematic for any stretch of reasons.
So, Rick, on the other side of this, we reported at MS Now that associates of Trump's own political operation understand he's not going to perfectly echo the GOP's strategic messaging campaign. He's going to say whatever he feels like saying on any given day. But what would you tell the Senate GOP over their meeting in which they were expressing concerns about Trump and the lack of seriousness in which he has taken the midterms here?
I mean, have they not met him? This is a man who does not think about the Republican Party as a party he has to help. It's all a one-way street for him. It's like, do they obey me? Do they like me? Do they come and kiss the ring? And really, their electoral prospects this year have been damaged because of Donald Trump's actions on tariffs, on the war, on a host of other areas. And the one thing they should do, which is to get some daylight on him and talk about affordability, is the one thing they can't do. So instead, they're stuck with his messaging of screaming about imaginary communists everywhere. I think that it is a very tough spot for the Republicans. And, the House is looking very, very problematic. And the Senate should have been a lot easier for them. And it's getting worse by the day.
Molly, meanwhile, a moderate Democrat group known as Third Way is planning a $15 million spend to oppose progressive Dems and try to convince the country that progressive Democratic policies are not the way forward. Can the progressive movement, though, at this point be stalled by more moderate Dems who are concerned that they can't win in battleground races, or does this only hurt the wider Democratic Party as a whole at this point?
I think it's hard to know what this money will do. Look, the thing we've seen from the Michigan Democratic primary results is that candidate quality matters. And even if a spend will help, it doesn't necessarily get a candidate over the line. And I think, with the progressives who won, they have been actually very strong candidates. Like, when you hear El Sayed speak, he's a very good speaker. And he has the same thing that Zoran has, where he's very good at staying on message. I mean, he has this call and response, money in your pocket, Medicare for all. These are things that voters have said they wanted. And remember, the Democratic base is very angry, and they want to see their people fighting for them. And this may not be so simple. This may not just be progressives versus moderates. This may be an angry base that feels the party has not delivered for them, and them wanting candidates who are offering something that feels like it's going to happen imminently. And so I don't know that the framing is as simple as that. Also, there are some real problems with the Democratic establishment right now, like the DNC, and I just don't understand why they're focusing on a part of the party, or even, when they could be focusing on the sort of larger infrastructure problems. That money could go to candidates and not against Democratic candidates.
Rick, well, we're talking about the factions that exist within the Democratic Party. I believe you and I was going back. We first sat down and met up for coffee in Tallahassee literally a decade ago here this summer. Yeah. And we were talking about the future of the GOP at that point. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about the future of the Democratic Party, this time, 10 years later, I'm going to ask you, because you're looking at Progressive Abdul El-Sayed running in Michigan, but also you have your fellow Republican David Jolly running as a Democrat now for governor of Florida. What does the Democratic Party's future look like? And if you were advising a Republican at this point, they're running against a Democratic Party that has a lot of elements to it at this point.
Look, the Republicans would like to categorize all Democrats as wild-haired, flaming communists, ignoring candidate quality, as mentioned just a moment ago. Look, they've got candidates across the political spectrum running in the country in states where they fit. And Syed, he fits. He works for that state. He works for Michigan. Maybe that wouldn't work in North Carolina, but in North Carolina we've got a great candidate who's more in the center left. In Florida, Jolly is in the center left, and all these Democratic candidates, it's actually inverted what the Republican Party used to be. You used to have liberal Republicans, moderate Republicans, conservative Republicans. Now you only have Trump Republicans. And the Democrats have got candidates running who are in all different wings of the party. So it is a little bit more of a slippery target for the GOP to say absolutely all of them are the same as Mamdani or the same as AOC or the same as the Squad. It's a really tough assignment because you see these people who have also this year come out. The Democrats have also come out with a slate of much more talented candidates than they have in a long time. So I think that they're in a better position to resist some of that attack vector from the GOP.
So
I'd just like to add one thing. There's also a group of independents in states where the Democratic Party brand is bad. And they are running not as left versus right, but as up versus down. And so you have people like Dan Osborne in Nebraska and Rob Sand in Iowa and Josh Turek in Iowa, who are candidates that are actually trying to get this movement, this progressive. It's not progressive. It's more just like a worker movement, a union movement. And I think it defies naming in a way. It's really its own thing. And I think that the fact that they're not running as Democrats, that they're running as